we go. Welcome, everyone. I'm here with Dan Collins, and we're going to be talking about his projects and his art and stuff like that. So, Dan, tell the people out there what you have done. Uh, Introduce yourself.
Sure. Okay, so I'm Dan Collins. Whoops, sticking my finger in the camera. Dan Collins, I'm a writer. I have wrote a few different things. Started off writing some Little Aurora Man comics with Jeff Burton for his Aurora Man series. And since then, I've written a short story for Archie. I've written Canuck Adventures for Chapter House, contributed to the True Patriot Presents anthology put out by Chapter House as well, and a couple other things.
Nice. You keep him pretty busy there. Um, so, what's your process for writing? What do you usually do for process? Like I talked to Jeff. Jeff usually writes down in a journal, and then he transfers it over and stuff like that. Do you do the same, or?
When I started writing, what I would do is I would actually storyboard everything, sketching it all out in like stick figures, because I'm horrible artist. So I would storyboard it out in stick figures and kind of just sketch it all out. But then I decided that was kind of silly, and I started writing it just straight. And actually, if I choose to handwrite it, that works as the first draft. And then by the time I enter it into my laptop, that's the second draft, because I can't even read what I had previously wrote. So now I'm just looking at this and trying to remember, and therefore it becomes a new draft. So I'm not much of I like to just go on the laptop when I can, straight from my brain to the screen, rather than having my fingers hold me up.
Right.
But I do take a notepad around to try to jot down ideas or story plots and stuff that come to me.
Yeah, so you don't forget those. I was doing that for a while, taking a little notebook and writing down stuff. But I usually like working on the computer as well. Just open up Word and just start typing. And I find that you can just delete stuff and then just replace it with other stuff.
Yeah, and a lot of times, it helps when you're maybe on a second draft and you're like, okay, this scene works better in a different spot in the book. You don't have to just like retype that all out. You can copy paste things around. I've moved stuff from different even issues because it will work better, somewhere else. So
Mm-hmm. And do you usually, like when you write, do plot or full scripts?
um, I try to usually, I guess, I have a plot, and then my first draft is just me trying to get something down on paper that's something kind of like what I'm doing, what I'm thinking in my head for the plot. And then usually by the time that first draft is down, it's changed completely from what I was thinking about, and then I go back and like refine it from there.
Okay, all right, cool. Now, when you got into comics, you probably got quite a few collections of comic books. So, what was your first comic book you ever read?
Probably the first comic book I ever read was, I think, like Uncanny X-Men 301 or 302, somewhere right in there. It was the early mid 90s, and my brother and I went to the comic book store, and we picked up Uncanny X-Men, What If, and Spectacular Spider-Man. And we collected those for a couple years. I wish we had gone with Amazing Spider-Man, because there's some valuable comics in there. But you know, we picked up those ones, went with those, and that was the first comics that I ever read. And honestly, from the 90s till like I stopped reading comics till probably 2006, 2007. So like I just stopped reading and then got back into it later.
Okay. Do you have a particular favorite title that you like now, or since you've gone back?
Um, I don't. I'm a little out of touch with current comics. I find it hard to keep up with everything. But what actually got me back into comics was Jeff Johns' Green Lantern. I picked up an old showcase volume of Silver Age Green Lantern comics, as well as Green Lantern Rebirth, and I really liked the kind of silliness of the old Green Lantern comics. And Hal Jordan is a favorite character, and then I read the Green Lantern Rebirth from Jeff Johns, and instantly became a huge fan of both his work and also Hal Jordan there, and that just opened up the whole world to me for DC Comics, and so I read Green Lantern for many years at that.
Nice. Now, do you have a favorite writer besides Jeff Johns? You mentioned Jeff Johns, but is there anybody that particularly stands out for you as a writer that you enjoy, say, in comic books or maybe even novels?
So you were cutting out there just a little bit, but were you asking about other writers I like?
Oh, you're freezing there, Dan.
Nope. Technical issues.
Yeah. So, well, we still got you here. Who would it be?
Yeah, I'm also a big fan of Grant Morrison's writing. I really like his stuff, despite the fact that most people don't like it. Final Crisis was always something that I actually really enjoyed reading, and his Batman issues and stuff were really good. Batman R.I.P. is one of my favorite DC runs.
So have you read anything like older stuff like Crisis and stuff like that? Because I know some of my favorite writers would be like Marv Wolfman, Peter David. Have you ever read any of their stuff?
No, I haven't read a whole lot of comics from like Chris Claremont, obviously, with X-Men is a great run.
Yep.
But I'm more into newer writers, not if you can call Grant Morrison and Jeff Johns. Now they're already, there's a whole new generation of writers since those guys even were out. So I've read some of like Peter David's actual like books and stuff, but not a lot of his comic books.
Okay.
So
now, is there any independents that you maybe followed?
I read as many independent Canadian comics as I can. I'm a big fan of like Auric from Davis Dewsbury and Andrew North from Scott Sawyer. I can't think of all the other ones. Obviously, Aurora Man, I read that every issue out. If you've got an independent Canadian comic that's out there and you're at a convention, I will pick it up and I will read it, because having been on the other side of the table, I like to try to support as many indie as possible. And sometimes indie writers can come up with way better ideas than the Marvel or DC, because they're not hampered by all the editorial stuff.
Yeah, they got a lot of restriction and stuff like that. So how do you find like working? You've worked with Chapter House. How do you find working with them for freedom and stuff like that for writing?
I think it's good. I'm working on some projects with them still. Canuck Adventures. We had issue 1 come out a little while ago, and we're still working on getting the rest of that out. And have another project with them that's due to drop sometime within the next few months. So I enjoy working with them. It's always interesting to work with an editorial team as well. When you're putting out an independent comic, there's nobody who's guiding you towards where, say, this character has to be by the end of this series and that kind of thing. And it can be fun to work with an editor towards a greater goal to telling the story, like creating worlds and figuring out where characters go in a big world like the chapter verse.
Right. So you get to play with all their characters. Can you bring any of their characters into your stories? Like, since it's, I think you're doing, what is it, Little Canuck or something?
We only get to play with the character we'll play with.
I'm sorry.
So the series,
Oh, are we still got you back here, Dan? So you keep cutting in and out.
Bad connection, I guess.
Is it your connection there, Dan, that we're having some problems with?
No. Yeah, maybe it is. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, because you keep coming in and out of it. Well, we'll try to stick it through. So what were you saying about the chapter house characters? So you get to use any of those, like the lizard and stuff like that, into your stories? I think they're still doing it. No, they're not doing the lizard.
You only get to... No, yeah, Jason Luce finished with his run with the Pitiful Lizard, and you only get to use the characters that you're supposed to use. So my story that I'm working on has it's just 3 characters, 2 of them who are new to the chapter verse, and 1 that's existing character within the chapter verse. So it's more of a tight story rather than a big broad multi-character story.
Oh, so you can't use multiple character, like a big huge story with different other characters and stuff.
Yeah, okay. It's just a few characters.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't need a whole bunch of complicated probably storylines for that anyway, because you're writing for younger kids, right? In these stories.
Well, this one that I'm working on that's out yet is a regular chapterverse title. The Canuck Adventures one was kind of like a Brave and the Bold type series where we have Captain Canuck team up with different superheroes to save the day, and that's a kid's one to introduce them to a bunch of different superheroes. And there is every 2 issues there's a character that Captain Canuck teams up with.
Okay, all right. And is there like any effects that you have to? Do you have to resolve the stories? Because if it's in another title or something, like with Captain Canuck or something, does it have to be resolved or tied up in your story, and not go into the chapterverse universe?
I didn't quite catch the question there.
When you're doing the stories for the Captain Canuck, Little Canucks or anything like that, you're bringing other characters in, or the Captain Canuck, does it only contain to that story and doesn't go out into the regular books?
For the story that I'm working on for the main chapterverse, that is a part of the whole Chapter House universe. Mm-hmm. So those characters are not self-contained. That's just a part of the whole web of things that are happening in the chapterverse.
All right. Okay. So I noticed here with the Canuck Adventures, they're animals instead of people.
Yeah, for the Canuck Adventure, Andrew Thomas drew them all as cute, fluffy animals. So each character has now been turned into an animal.
Okay, so they were they human, or they always started off as animals in the story?
Yeah, there's a we weren't even thinking about it, but like in issue 1, some of the bad guys are like there's bystanders that are humans, but all like heroes and bad guys are animals, and we were like, oh, like we didn't even realize till after the issue was done. So I guess in the Canuck Adventures world, if you're a hero or a bad guy, you're an animal, and if you're a regular bystander person, you just get to be a normal human.
Oh, okay. It's not like the
Figure out why during season 2.
okay. So it's sort of like Captain Carrot. Are you familiar with that from DC Comics? There was a book called Captain Carrot and the Zoo or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Zoo Crew, Captain Carrot and the Zoo Crew. Yes, I actually have Captain Carrot's first appearance. I think it was New Teen Titans for 16. I have that one in my comic book collection. So yes, Captain Carrot was an alternate reality version of Superman from one of the other multiverse universes.
Yeah, I had I saw that years ago because I was collecting Teen Titans. I'm a big George Perez fan, and when George Perez moved over to DC, I started buying the new Teen Titans, and that was a special insert in the I think at the end of the book or something. It didn't tie in with the Teen Titans. It had a Superman title or crossover, and then they did another issue with I think #1 with Superman in it, but they were all animals. So that's what kind of that reminded me of when I looked when I saw that Canuck Adventures.
Yeah, that one Andrew had been wanting to launch a kids Captain Canuck series for years because he has younger kids, and he thought this would be great to get them into Captain Canuck, and so finally managed to get something approved and out for issue #1 there. And then it's been a little bit since issue 1 came out because we're all caught up in other projects, but we are still it's still on the horizon. We're still working on it.
Okay, so you're still going to do some more series, because I just noticed here it's just only says Captain Canuck Adventures 1.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yeah, it's just only issue 1 that came out then, you said.
Yeah, issue one we launched at the Tri-City Comic-Con year and a half ago. We did that sort of maybe possibly a little prematurely because we were so excited to have it done, and but then we all got caught up in other projects. There are things written and just waiting to go through the rest of the process.
Okay. Well, it'd be nice to see it as a series. I meant to pick it up. It was at I think I might have. Was it at? Did it come out at Richard Cumley's convention that he had last year or the year before?
Yeah. Yeah, we launched it at the first Tri-City Comic-Con.
Okay. Okay, so that's where I remember seeing it. But I know Andrew, he came to the Kitchener Comic-Con one time, and I thought maybe he might have had some that he brought a preview or some of that with him. So it's always hard to remember where you see this stuff.
Andrew has a clip somewhere of Jay Baruchel talking to me and Andrew about the comic, which I think is really cool, and I need to get my hands on that clip because that's the closest I've been to stardom.
We lost you there a bit. You said it was the closest you've been.
Closest I've been to stardom.
Okay. We gotta.
Sitting next to Jay Baruchel.
Oh, okay. Oh, isn't he the run that's helping running Chapter House right now?
Yeah, he's the part owner in Chapter House, and he wrote the Captain Canuck Year 1 storyline and also co-wrote the Invasion storyline. I believe that is the newest one that they're starting to put out now.
Okay. Because they did a free comic book day, and they give that one away for free, didn't they? At the Invasion?
Yeah. Yeah, issue 1 or issue 0 of that, the free comic book day issue, and it is available. They're starting to make it available through Checkhouse's print-on-demand service.
So it's available on their print-demand. You can't, I guess with the number 1 of Canuck Avengers, you can still order that on their website, right? On Chapter House? If people want to still get that?
If you want to get that one, you can always send Andrew or I a message. Probably both have some copies still. Andrew probably has more copies and better shipping because he's used to shipping everything out because he does a lot of the Chapter House shipping and stuff. But yeah, we still have copies, so if anybody wants one,
okay,
they can message Andrew or I.
And it'll probably be reprinted again once you start picking up the series anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, usually with most stuff with Chapter House, they usually reprint it or put it in trade books. No, did you?
Yeah, like the goal is to get everything into a paperback.
Yeah. Now, I imagine you read all the original Captain Canucks, right?
Sorry, I heard you say all the original Captain Canuck.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I read. I started with number 3, so I've been with Richard for a long time. So I'm.
Yeah, I try to read. I read the Richard Comley Captain Canuck comics, the original series, like probably, honestly, twice a year, maybe 3 times a year. Digitally, I have them all. I have them all physically, like multiple copies of each, because I'm a nerd, and I have them digitally, and I'll reread them 2 or 3 times a year just to like, because I love them. I enjoy reading them.
Yeah, he did some good stories back in the 80s.
Yeah.
But I bought all the stuff when I heard IDW was going to print Captain Canuck. I went out and bought all the hardcovers, but I was disappointed they didn't have 1, 2, and 3 in there. I think they started with 4. I guess it was a deal with.
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, because it would have been nice to have one all the way up to, what was the last issue, 13 or 14? I think it was. It was the one.
14 was the last issue, and then 15 Richard released years later.
Yeah, 15 was the Ghost one, wasn't it? Which he didn't write. It was George that wrote that.
Issue 15 had the Stygian.
Yeah.
The energy being that. Yeah.
It was interesting seeing that.
I like that story.
It was a good story. Him trying to get back into being Captain Canuck, and then him wondering about his younger self and where his younger self would be. I'm like thinking, ooh, we're talking about
like
time stuff, like screwing up the
I
timeline.
thought that would. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was a really cool thing that he had messed up the timeline somehow, and now it's 1980 instead of the 90s, and he's there and he's Captain Canuck. It was an interesting premise, and if Richard had been able to continue and do more stories, it'd be interesting to see what he would have wanted to do with that premise.
Yeah. No, that was Richard's story in 15 because I presumed it was George's storyline.
I'm not 100% sure. Like I know they both got most of the issues there, but if it was George's storyline, then I'm interested where George would take it. I just want to know what the Canuck team's plan was from this spot.
Yeah.
Was Canuck ever going to get back to his proper timeline?
Yeah. It would have been nice if they, I know they did the classic Captain Canuck, but it would have been nice if they could have maybe somehow arranged to continue to that story in the 90s, right after that issue 15.
Yeah. Now, in the Unholy War one that was written by a couple other guys, I believe the Langlois brothers, they bring Tom back as a character, and he builds a spaceship and gets back to his proper timeline. So I'm not sure if that is meant to be an actual continuation of the original series, like this is in the new world that Tom has created by accident or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, in issue 4, like Captain Canuck climbs into a spaceship and is like, I'm out, and he just flies off into the sunset.
Oh. And that was in that the West Canuck, because I don't remember him going in.
David Semple.
Okay, because I don't remember him going into a ship. I remember him talking to the new Captain Canuck, and he got a chair and he bent it up or something, and said that he sold the stories to a publisher.
Yeah. So
of the stories of being Captain Canuck and stuff like that.
Exactly.
But I don't remember a ship.
This is the one. It was issue 4 of a 3-issue series, so they added an extra issue. So maybe you didn't get the last issue and read the entire series.
Okay.
There. It came out like 2 years after the rest of the series.
Okay, so I must have thought it was over with, and just didn't look for it anymore, or didn't come into the store, and because they usually grab
Probably,
everything.
yeah. This one has a guy with a. This one has a guy with a saw on the cover attacking Canuck.
Okay. I'll have to see if I can find it somewhere and pick it up. Chapter House doesn't have any of those, do they?
Unholy War was reprinted. I think it might be out of print at the moment, but there are plans to read stuff at some point in the not so distant future. So if you can't find a copy right now, just have a little patience, and I'm sure they'll be able to make it available.
Okay.
Again, at some point, not too far away.
All right. Now, is there any other things that you do besides comics? Do you do any novels or anything, or screenplays?
I'm a comic writer because I'm a failed novelist.
Okay. So is there a plan?
I started by writing novels. Sorry, what was that?
I was going to say, is there plans to do a Captain Canuck novel? Because there's always been talk of Richard in the past doing a Captain Canuck novel.
No, not that I've been made aware of. I mean, it's possible that they've got some plans, but no, nothing that I've been made aware of as far as a Captain Canuck novel.
Okay.
At least nothing official. I may have some Captain Canuck fan fiction novels on my hard drive that I've written over the years, but nothing official.
Okay, because I seen some quite a few years back. Foddy, is that his name? That runs Chapter House. He was mentioning.
Yeah, I know they put out like one novel a while ago.
Okay, because they were asking for submissions or some for writers or some to work on a novel or parts of it to be put into a novel.
Yeah, so I saw that ad on their Facebook page or their website. I saw that ad on their website, and I decided that I wanted to write a David Semple Captain Canuck novel. And I started working on a plot and came up with like 30 or 40 pages of like starting to write this thing. And then I talked to Keith Morris, the editor for Chapter House, and he was like, nobody wants to read a David Semple novel. Turn it into a Tom Evans novel. And I said, I can. It's too David Semple specific. And so that's just on my hard drive right now, rotting away.
Well, maybe one day it'll get printed.
Probably not. Probably not. It's probably not even.
Got to be
probably terrible.
Got to be optimistic about it, you know. Now, how did you?
It's fan. It's probably just fan fiction.
Can you get permission to put it up online or something?
No, I mean I would have to finish it first.
Oh, so it's not completely done. No?
I just gave up and. No, it's like 40 or 50 pages of a novel. It was fun. I enjoyed writing it, even if it was just, for me to read and nobody else.
Okay. Now, Dan, how did you get into Chapter House? How did they approach you, or did you approach them? Did you send them a resume, or?
It was mostly so. It was first through the True Patriot Presents. I had written a story with the Canadian Sentinel, a character I created, and we came up with a 4-page story. Myself, Justin Schaff did the art, and Ivan Yatsik did the and we came up with a 4-page story. And I messaged Tony White, who is the editor of True Patriot Presents, and said like, hey, I've got this thing. Is there something you guys can do with this? And they decided to put it into the True Patriot Presents digital anthology. So we turned that 4-page story into a 25-page ongoing story for over 4 issues of the digital anthology. And so that was my first experience getting into the world of Chapter House. And then after that adventures happened, and then some other projects were mentioned, and I've gotten to do a little bit of more work with Chapter House. But it was really just this Canadian Sentinel idea that I had come up with that got my sort of foot in the door there. And maybe possibly also bothering Keith about a David Semple fan fiction novel.
Oh, okay. Nice. Just seeing if there's any questions here, but I don't see anything here. So is there any advice you could give to people getting into writing, or anything to study to make them better at writing, or anything like that? You can pass on your knowledge a bit.
The only thing that I would basically say is don't give up. Like I wrote short stories for 10 years, had nobody want to publish them. I sent them out to a lot of places, nobody wanted them, and nothing happened. And I could have given up, but then short stories turned into comics, and the expense from writing those shorts, the hard work I put into those, had me prepared for when I started to write books. I had already put some time and developed myself as a writer, and then the jump from short stories to comic books was really quick and fairly easy for me. So just don't give up if nobody wants your stuff. It doesn't mean it's bad. It might not just be what people are looking for. And every page you write is going to be better than the previous page you wrote, because you're going to get better.
Good advice. Yeah. Should never give up on what you feel passionate about. Sometimes it doesn't happen all the time right away. It may take a few years.
Yeah. Writing short stories and nobody wanting them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it took you a little while to get going and figuring a structure too for your stories.
Yeah. If you want to read a great book on how to set comic storylines and stuff, I would recommend Denny O'Neil's book, The DC Guide to Story Writing, I believe it's called. Okay. It's a great book, and I read that multiple times a year to refresh myself and make sure that I'm still not getting lost in my own thoughts as far as how things should be, and following, this is how the plot should be. These are the steps towards making a good plot in a comic book.
Good. Nice. Oh, we got somebody here that says true. And Antonio Coburn. Yeah. That's nice. Let's see. We're here at... I'm just trying to think of something else to say for you, Dan. Sorry. I'm not usually short for words. So maybe what we'll do is we'll end the podcast. Just let people know where they can find you at, if they need to ask you some, or they can maybe see. I know you probably don't. Do you have a blog or anything that you put up? I got your your at Canuck_fan_Dan Instagram page, right?
Yes.
But you don't have a blog or anything?
Yeah, I'm just on Instagram. Just on Instagram, Facebook. I don't have any sort of website, blog, or anything. So yeah, if somebody wants to ask a question, hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. Now there are a million people named Dan Collins, so just make sure you get the right one.
So we get one here that says, "Yep, that's me. I'm currently working on one myself." So yeah, keep it up and keep writing. May not happen the first time, right, Dan? It may take 5 years to do it.
Yep. Yep.
And you got to do what you love, and just get it out. Even if you do it for free, right? You
go into it like you're writing the stories for yourself, and if somebody else wants to read them, that's just a bonus. Write the stories that you want to hear and that you want to read, and that other people want to write them. So having fun while you do it.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you, Dan, for coming on. So I'm going to end the broadcast. So thank you again.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm glad. It's a pleasure to have you. So I'm just going to end it now. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and everyone have a good day.